Have you ever walked away from a conversation and spent the rest of your day wondering if you said something wrong? Or received a piece of feedback and felt like it was saying something about who you are? Not everything feels personal because it is. A lot of it feels personal because your mind turns it into something about you. If you've ever taken something personal, you've probably told yourself to stop overthinking, to stop caring so much. Yet the same thing keeps happening. A comment stays with you, a delayed reply changes your mood, a piece of feedback follows you. It isn't always the moment that's difficult to deal with, it's the meaning your mind gives that moment. And once that meaning settles in, everything else begins to make sense. The first reason we take so many things personally is that we turn ordinary events into something about ourselves. It isn't always about the event that happened, it's what your mind makes it mean. You could receive a short reply from someone you've been talking to, and before you know it, your mind has already decided something has changed. Or you wonder if they're upset with you, if you said something wrong, if they're pulling away. The reply was short, the story became much bigger. The same thing can happen at work. Your manager gives you feedback on something you could improve on, and instead of hearing, "This needs to be better," you hear, "You're not good enough." I know that feeling. There was a time when feedback didn't feel like guidance to me, it felt personal. I walked away thinking everyone was against me. Looking back now, I wasn't reacting to the feedback itself, I was reacting to what I believed the feedback was saying about me. That's why taking things personally usually begin. Your mind doesn't live an experience exactly as it happened. It tries to ask, what does this say about me? And once that question enters the conversation, the event is no longer just an event, it becomes a reflection of your worth. That's a heavy weight for one moment to carry. Just a single moment, a single look, a single piece of feedback. I want you to hear me when I say none of those things can define you on their own. They only gain that power when you allow them to answer a question they were never meant to answer. So the next time you catch yourself taking something personally, pause for that moment. And instead of asking, "What does this say about me?" ask, "What actually happened?" That small shift won't answer every question, but it will stop your mind from turning one moment into a verdict about who you are. Learning to separate what happened from what it came to mean is one of the first steps towards taking fewer things personally. This raises another question. Even when nothing has been confirmed, why does my mind still feel so certain something is wrong? The reason your mind feels so certain something is wrong is that it doesn't like unanswered questions. Send someone a message and hours goes by without a reply. The silence feels so uncomfortable, so your mind starts looking for an explanation. You wonder if they are busy, then another thought appears. What if they're upset with me? Then another, what if I said something wrong? Before you know it, you've built an entire story around a reply that hasn't even come yet. The difficult part is that none of those thoughts came from the other person. They came from your mind trying to make sense of something it couldn't explain. I know this feeling too. There have been moments where someone became distant and before I ever spoke to them, I had already convinced myself I was the reason. I'll try to reach out. I'll ask if everything was okay. Not because they had told me I've done something wrong, because my mind has already decided I probably had. Looking back, I wasn't responding to what they did, I was responding to the story I already created. That is what taking things personally often does. It fills empty spaces with conclusion that hasn't been confirmed. The more those conclusions go unchallenged, the more real they begin to feel. So I need you to do this. The next time you notice your mind filling in the blanks, resist the urge to answer a question that hasn't been answered yet. Give yourself permission to wait. Not every silence needs an explanation. Not every delay carries a hidden message. There are moments where the healthiest thing you can do is to allow the facts arrive before your conclusions do. It doesn't make uncertainty comfortable. It keeps uncertainty from turning into a story that was never true. Once a story has lived in your mind long enough, it becomes very easy to mistake it for the truth, and you start treating your interpretation like the truth. Once a story stays in your mind for a long time, it becomes harder to remember that it started as a possibility. It begins to feel like the truth. You could walk into work after receiving feedback the day before, and even though no one has said another word about it, you find yourself thinking everyone is looking at you differently. A friend replies a little differently than usual, and before the conversation is over, you've already decided that friendship has changed. Nothing new has happened, the story just feels more convincing than it did yesterday. That's what our mind can do. The more we replay one explanation, the more familiar it becomes, and familiar thoughts often feel true even when they've never been confirmed. This is where taking things personally becomes exhausting. You don't just react to what happened anymore. You react to what you've become convinced happened. There is a difference. One is based on fact, the other is based on interpretation that never stopped to ask if it was accurate. That can change the way you speak to people. It can make you pull away from relationships. It can make you apologize for things you never did. Not because any of those things were necessary, but because your mind has already accepted the story as reality. The next time you catch yourself feeling certain about what someone else thinks of you, pause and ask yourself one question. Do I know this? Or have I concluded it? They are not the same thing. One question creates space between the fact and the story your mind is telling, and that space gives you the chance to respond differently. Once the stories start feeling true, they don't just challenge how you see the situation, they begin to change how you see yourself. And it will make you turn other people's behavior into a reflection of your words. It gets to a point where the story isn't just about what happened anymore, it becomes about who you believe you are. You could receive a constructive feedback at work, and instead of hearing, "This is something you can improve," your mind quietly hears, "You're not good enough." Or someone seems a little distant, and instead of thinking they might have a lot on their mind, you start wondering what you did to push them away. The situation changes, and your identity gets pulled into it. I remember receiving a feedback at work that should have helped me grow years ago. Instead, I walked away feeling like everyone was against me. The feedback wasn't attacking my words. My mind had connected the feedback to my words. Those are two very different things. That's why taking things personally can be so painful. It isn't only the commitment that hurts. It feels as though something inside you has been questioned. Probably your value, your ability, the kind of person you are. That's a heavy conclusion to reach from one moment. People can correct your work without rejecting you. They can disagree with your opinion without rejecting you. They can have a bad day without it being about you. When every interaction becomes a measure of your worth, you spend your life searching for reassurance that you were never meant to need. So the next time someone's behavior leaves you questioning yourself, pause before turning their actions into a description of who you are. Their behavior tells you something about that moment. It doesn't automatically tell you something about your value. Learning to separate those two things protects more than your peace. It protects the way you see yourself. Once your sense of worth depends on how every interaction goes, other people begin to have far more control over your emotions than they should. And this could make you start responding to the story instead of the person. Once your mind has decided what something means, it's very easy to respond to that meaning instead of the person in front of you. You could convince yourself that a friend is upset with you, and instead of having a normal conversation, you become unusually quiet. Or you try to apologize before they've even told you they're offended. You pull away, you over-explain, you try to fix a problem that hasn't even been confirmed. The other person is responding to the conversation. You're responding to the story your mind created before the conversation even began. That's why taking things personally don't just affect the way you think, it changes the way you behave. There are moments where your reaction isn't coming from what the other person did, it's coming from the conclusion you've already reached in your mind. That can create misunderstanding that never needed to exist. You spend so much time reacting to what you believe is happening that you never stop to discover what is actually happening. Every time you react to the story, your mind takes it as proof that the story was right all along. The cycle keeps repeating. You think the story, you respond to the story, then your response becomes another reason to believe the story. Breaking that cycle starts with slowing the conversation down. Before reacting, ask yourself, am I responding to what this person actually did or to the meaning I've attached to it? That question gives the other person a chance to show you who they are, instead of asking your fears to answer for them. And once you stop reacting to every story your mind creates, you begin to realize something very freeing. Not everything needs to become personal in the first place. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this conversation, it's this. Not everything your mind tells you deserves your agreement. Your mind will always have an explanation. It will try to make sense of silence. It will try to make sense of rejection. It will try to make sense of someone's tone, their expression, or the way they look at you. That's what minds do. They look for meaning. The question is whether that meaning is true. Taking things personally doesn't disappear the day you stop having emotional reaction. It starts changing the day you stop believing every story your mind creates. So when something leaves you feeling hurt, embarrassed, rejected, or judged, don't rush to decide what it means. Stay with what actually happened first. If someone gave you a feedback, stay with the feedback. If someone replied late, stay with the late reply. If someone seemed distant, stay with the distant. Don't add another chapter until you know there really is one. You've noticed that a lot of the weight you've been carrying didn't come from the moment itself. It came from everything your mind added to it afterwards. That doesn't mean you will never take things personally again. No, there will still be moments where old patterns show up. The difference now is you will recognize them sooner. And once you recognize them, you have a choice. You don't have to follow every thought all the way to a conclusion. You can now pause. You can now try to look at the situation again and allow reality to speak before your fear does. That's where emotional intelligence begins. Not in pretending you don't feel hurt, not in convincing yourself that nothing affects you, but in learning to separate what happened from the story your mind created about what happened. If there's one thing I really love for you to live with, it's this. Not everything that hurts you is telling you something about you. A delayed reply isn't always rejection. Feedback isn't always a personal attack. Someone else's mood isn't always your responsibilities. There are moments where nothing is wrong with your words. Your mind has simply attached your words to a moment that was never meant to define it. Taking things personally isn't a habit you break overnight. There will still be days where your mind jumps to conclusion. The difference is that you will notice it sooner. You will pause a little longer. You question the story before believing it. And little by little, you stop carrying weight that was never yours to carry. That's what emotional intelligence looks like. The next time you catch yourself taking something personally, don't rush to ask, what's wrong with me? Start by asking, what actually happened? That one question could change the entire conversation you're having with yourself. I promise you that. If this conversation gave you something to think about, I'd love for you to be part of the next one. Here on Inner Room, we're learning how to understand ourselves a little bit better and turning thoughts into conversation. If that's the kind of journey you want, subscribe and join me for the next conversation. Thank you for spending this few minutes with me. This is Inner Room, a place where we try to understand ourselves a bit better. Until our next conversation, keep getting back to yourself. See you in the Inner Room.